Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Last Zebra. I'm your host, Ugo Ezama. As always, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share our episodes. Today I have a lovely guest, Dr. Britni Wilson.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming through.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. After talking with your illustrious husband, Dr. Brian Wilson, I had to get you on here.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, what do you want to know?
Everything.
That's a long story. I guess we can I'll give you a shortcut to it a little bit, and then we can dive off, turn down some roads that we feel are interesting. How's that sound?
I love it.
So I am from Jacksonville, Florida.
Jaguars.
Oh, Lord. The struggle of being from Jacksonville and rooting for the Jaguars. It's like, you just don't expect to win. And if you win, it's a good time. If we win a game, it's like the Super Bowl to us. So, but I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. And I had a very, I would say, simple childhood with a few complications, if that makes sense. Okay. So my father was incarcerated when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
So my mom was still very young. You know, she's a new mom, new wife, and then all of a sudden her husband is incarcerated. So that was difficult for her, I think, more than for me at 3 years old, because you have no comprehension of what's going on, right? So really a lot of my childhood was, I don't want to use the word centered around that, but I know that a lot of my pain or doubts or journey came back to that, right? So, I mean, and I think because of that, like my family always rallied around me, like they overcompensated. My mom always poured into me, always made me feel like that would never hold me back, never stop me from achieving anything. She never made me feel ashamed about it. She was really strong, I would say. She made sure I had a relationship with my father. So I would go and see my dad in prison. I've never seen my dad outside of a prison uniform. So I have no idea what he looks like in regular clothes. And I get emotional about that because he's still in prison to this day. But that, and I think I suppressed it for so long about how that really shaped me. And it wasn't until 2020, when everything else was shut down, that you have to really sit with your thoughts, right? And think like, well, what is my life? What is going on? And it wasn't until 2020 that I really dug into it, and not like it's not something you overcome because it's still your present in your everyday life, right? But it's something that you have to understand how it affects you. And I never connected those two. It was actually my husband that would ask me, how does it affect you? And I'm like, it does. I don't think that it does. He's like, are you sure? Because there are certain things that you would do. And so in 2020, I really dived into that. But overall, my childhood was great. Like, I mean, my mom made me feel like I could do anything. She was really tough on me. My family, they made me feel like I could do anything. It's probably why I have a big head right now. So I'm very grateful for elements of my childhood. I have an amazing stepfather who stepped in and is still, my father today. So I always say I have two fathers now. But I had to learn how to be okay with being myself, which was really hard because as a child, you naturally compare yourself to other children and to other families. And I always felt like, it's one thing to say like, oh, my dad's not present in my life. It's another thing that you don't go to school and say, oh, where's your dad? Oh, he's in prison. And really, I should have been okay with it. I really should have been okay with it because he's my dad at the end of the day. I don't ever want to have that shame around it, but I did. If I'm being honest with myself, I really did.
That's normal. I think that anyone going through something like that, I would feel, growing up, a lot of it takes, I think a lot of that introspection kind of happens as you mature anyway, right? The things that we do as when we're children. What does the Bible say? Leave to the children the ways of the child, or
Yes.
something to that effect. I think any kid in that situation would feel some type of way about that.
Yes. And I did, but it also was a driving force for me as well to know that, okay, this is what I hate to use the word stacked against me, but these are my circumstances. So I always just worked really, really hard, because I never wanted to be put in that position where that would be my direction. And I just worked, and my mom was so tough on me, because I know she was so tough on me. She'll say, no, I wasn't that, but she was. But I've always been like a rule follower. Never broke the rules. Probably that had a lot to do with it. Even now, I'm not one to break the rules. Like if someone gives me extra change back, I'm like, you gave me an extra $1. So I've always been one to follow rules because I didn't want to get in trouble. I've always been one to like listen to what my mom told me, what my stepdad told me in school, because I didn't want to get in trouble. So in that, it creates not an insecurity, but you start to second guess things, because when you make decisions, you're like, well, is this within the parameters, or is this in the safe zone? So then you always want to be in the safe zone so that nothing bad happens to you, right? And that is where it carried with me into adulthood. Even now that I have to break outside of that, always following the rules, always having a more linear plan, right? And I've always been like a very linear person. So my childhood, I say it was simple because I didn't break the rules. I did what I was supposed to do. I went to school. I got great grades, went to college, like did everything that was asked of me, or what you think is supposed to be the normal trajectory, because I didn't want to get in trouble, right?
It sounds like you, and correct me if I'm interpreting this wrong, you made an active effort to make sure that your dad's incarceration wasn't a defining characteristic of who you were, but indirectly end up being that anyway. Do you feel that way?
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. I didn't want to be defined by it, but like you said, I was. And in the best of ways at times, but as you grow and you learn that there's a life outside of what is expected of you or what you know to be true. And I think today's youth, they have so much access to other things that, when we were growing up, it's what your parents tell you, what you may see on TV, but we didn't have all access to the internet, and not until later on, right?
Right.
So yes, you're correct. It did still shape me in some good ways. Another thing about it that even now as we talk about it that I'm thinking about is my father was wrongly incarcerated.
Wow.
So being blamed for something that I didn't do, even now, Brian will tell you, Brian, my husband, will tell you some of our arguments come from like him feeling blamed. And I think I have a lot of resentment or emotions around being wrongfully blamed for something that you didn't do. And it's something that I just carry out all the way until the end. Like I have to prove my point. I have to make sure my voice is heard so that I'm not falsely accused of something, right? So now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, yeah, it did define me in a lot of ways that I probably, as a young kid, didn't have any control over. Now thinking back, I have to go back and decide what are some of those characteristics that I want to keep and what are some that may not serve me anymore.
Right.
But overall, I had a great childhood. It was good. I have really no major complaints. I would do it all over again.
That's always a great compliment to. By the way, shout out to mom. Your mom.
Yes, shout out to mom.
Clearly, she raised an excellent daughter, and it sounds like she, like you said, it sounds from what you're telling me, she really did pour so much into you.
She did.
And I can tell from the way you beam up about just thinking about her
Yeah.
that you have tremendous gratitude
Yes.
for the kind of mother that you have.
Yeah.
And shout out to dad as well.
Yes.
Shout out to dad.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah, shout out to both of them and stepdad. Shout out to the
Yes.
two dads.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So Jacksonville, is Jacksonville the capital? No, Tallahassee's the capital.
Tallahassee's the capital.
Yeah, but Jacksonville, I think the trivia thing I know about Jacksonville is that it is, if not the largest, it is the largest city of the United States by just land.
Correct.
Land
Yes.
area.
Yes. So you can drive. You can start in one end of Jacksonville, drive an hour, and still be in Jacksonville.
Right,
so
right.
yeah, it's pretty spread out. But it was a nice place to grow up. I really don't have many complaints other than, it lacked a little diversity, but that's with
Any major city.
yeah, I guess not any. New
Yeah.
Orleans is completely different,
Right.
but it lacked diversity. I wasn't necessarily in the most diverse schools growing up, but I was in really great schools growing up. When I went to high school, it wasn't diverse in terms of African American population, but it was diverse in terms of just global population, which sometimes as African Americans, we think diversity is only what we see in color, right? But
That's a great point.
so it was diverse in other ways. So I was able to get exposed to a lot of different cultures, and it was a great experience, I would say. So growing up in Jacksonville, I mean, do I want to live in Jacksonville right now? Maybe when I'm like 55. Retirement, but it wouldn't be a place that I would. It's just a slow going town. So it's a big city, but it's a slow big city. It wasn't until I left Jacksonville after high school. Went to college in Orlando, Florida, University of Central Florida.
UCF.
Yes,
The Knights?
the Knights, and I had a difficult time at times in college because I spent so much time like with my family. Even though we were 2.5 hours away, it's just different. You have your friends, but I'm really close to my family. So I had some tough days and I struggled with really figuring out what I wanted to do for myself. And I knew I wanted to be in healthcare. I'd always known that. But I just didn't know like what direction exactly I wanted to go in. And I was on a pre-medical track and I shadowed a lot of different type of specialties, volunteered in the hospital. I ended up getting diagnosed with scoliosis. And I went to a orthopedic doctor. I went to a surgeon and they were like, well, you're probably going to have really bad back pain. You don't need rods in your back or anything like that, but it'll put you at a higher risk for arthritis and all these other different things. And there wasn't really, a solution. I did go to physical therapy, loved my physical therapist, but it wasn't until I met a chiropractor and that I had never been to a chiropractor before. I didn't know anything about chiropractic. I met this chiropractor at my apartment complex. I was like a leasing agent in college. And I was giving him and his daughter a tour and I just asked him like, oh, what do you do? He's like, oh, I'm a chiropractor. I'm like, I don't know any chiropractors, never been to a chiropractor. He's like, you should come to my office. And I said, okay. I went to his office and I absolutely loved it. Like I'd never been in an office where people were happy to be there. Wow. There was just this joy. And I thought like maybe it's specific to him, right? So then I shadowed other chiropractors and it was
consistent.
Exactly. And I thought like, what is different about it? I still didn't quite understand the full 360 of chiropractic, but I knew that I felt really good when I was there. And you know how sometimes you don't have a rationale, kind of like falling in love. you can't really put some of the things into words, but it's where you're supposed to be, who you're supposed to be with, or who you're supposed to be in that moment. That's how I felt. And so when people want like specifics, I can give you specifics, but that really wasn't it. It was just this feeling that
Sense
I
of
had.
belong.
Exactly. Or exactly. And I loved, and if you guys don't know, in chiropractic, you see patients at a higher frequency than maybe you may see your primary care physician. You may see a cardiologist once or twice or 3 times a year. We sometimes see patients 3 times a week.
Wow.
So you really get to learn who they are, their grandkids, about their families. It's a different type of relationship that I don't know you're always able to develop. Maybe therapists, get that. Which I keep tissues in my office because I have a lot of people that cry. Because I'm like, I'm not your therapist, I'm your chiropractor. But I remember the first time going back to my first time being in a chiropractic office and like the joy that was in there. And I thought to myself, this is where I need to be. So then I started discovering different chiropractic schools and looking into things of like what I needed to do to go down that track. And I was already on that track already. So after undergrad, I decided to go to chiropractic school and I moved to Atlanta. And that's when I really had to like discover, well, who am I?
Right.
Atlanta's a busy place.
It's a big city.
Have you ever been?
Always in transient.
Okay.
One of our really good friends, Dr. Brown, Chalet Brown.
Yes.
When they lived there for a year when she was doing her sleep fellowship, we went to visit. And other than that, I would just drive by or drive through Atlanta, but spend some time there with them. And I'm not a big city kind of guy, to be honest with you. So I tend to be overwhelmed about big cities. I like to visit them in moments, but I start getting a little antsy when traffic is taking a little too long. Yeah. When you bump into someone, they don't even care that they don't even realize they bumped into you. Because they're so busy. They didn't even and that was kind of starting to creep in. We stayed at an Airbnb, which was about 15 or 20 minutes outside of the town. So I was always happy to get back to the Airbnb, and that clearly demarked or clarified to me that I'm for sure not a big city dude. But Atlanta, there's so many good things about Atlanta, right? I think, is it still considered the Black Mecca?
It's one of them, I believe.
One of them.
Yeah.
It's a Black Mecca. It's a huge industrial center for a lot of things, right? So a lot of people really enjoy being there. I know it's a fantastic city. New Orleans Saints are rivals to Atlanta Falcons, so I pay particular attention to that as a Saints fan myself.
Okay.
But I've never really gone to Atlanta to experience it in fullness.
It's a great place. It's the traffic is not kind, but the people are. And I enjoyed being in Atlanta because I grew up in a predominantly white area, went to predominantly white schools. UCF is a predominantly white institution. So moving to Atlanta was really culturally at times overwhelming for me because I'd never felt like I had been in an environment where my Blackness was celebrated. So it was a great place for me to learn who I was, accept who I was, celebrate who I was. I'm very grateful for my time there. And it allowed me to have I believe, a more positive, inclusive experience in chiropractic school. So, here I am, young, excited, nervous, you have all of these responsibilities on you and all of these people around you supporting you. Some of my closest friends I met in chiropractic school that I'm still very close with today. And it was, I believe, a necessary step for me in discovering like who I was, because I could have gone to school. There was a chiropractic school in Florida that I got accepted into, but I chose not to go. It was only an hour away from home. I really believed that I needed to move away because so much of who I was
tied to Jacksonville.
Jacksonville, family. Friends, and most of my friends, my closest friends, are friends that I've been friends with from middle school and high school. But it's different when as you grow up, you learn different things about yourself and you discover different things. And a lot of the times you learn those from your interactions with other people. So I loved being able to meet new people and be in school and not have distractions of family and things that go on back home. A lot of the times, I don't know how it is culturally for you, but a lot of the times in my community, when there's drama going on in the family, are we allowed to curse on here? If you have your shit together, then a lot of it is, hey, this is going on, or this is going on, and that. And I didn't need that in school. I didn't need that. So, hey, this is going on. I know that if I were an hour away,
it would have been easier for them to distract you in that way.
For me to, we need you to come back and do this, or we need you to do that, and we need you to do this. And I love my family, but there are times in life where you have to be selfish and unapologetic about being selfish, and know that I love my family. I know that if I were there, I would be there for them, but I have to be here for me right now. So it gave me the time and just freedom to really dive into what I needed to do.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I agree with you. Definitely, especially when you're in that kind of setting where you're doing professional training, professional education. You need as little distraction as possible. And it sounds like in that experience too, you had enough on your plate where you were trying to essentially kind of fine tune yourself, hone in on yourself, figure out who you were outside of that setting, of that setting to begin with, of course. And juggling that must have been very difficult, I imagine.
It was really difficult. And right before I went to chiropractic school, it was my last year of undergrad, going back to my father, I had always, I don't know, I just didn't quite have an understanding of when his release date would be. I just thought, okay, he has X amount of years and then he gets out. So we were approaching a time where he would be out within the next, 5 years. So me going to professional school, wanting to plan around, you just think about these things.
Right.
And I remember I went online and I searched his record to see what his release date would be, and it didn't have one. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that's a mistake. So I just picked another random inmate, and most of them had release dates. And I asked my father, I said, I went online and I see that you don't have a release date. And he said, well, it's because I have to, there's mandatory that I serve X amount of years and then I'm eligible for parole. I was crushed. Because my whole life I had thought, oh, my dad is going to get out of prison. And, I imagine all of these things. And I knew that he had 25 years. So I was 3 years old. So when I'm 28, I'll be finishing school and maybe I'll be getting married at that time. And he'll walk me down the aisle. I was devastated because my whole life I had thought, we're winding down time. I'm working towards these things. And it may not even be what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
So that also played a role into me deciding I have to be selfish in some of these moments, and I have to really step away and decide who am I outside of these circumstances. So I'm so grateful for Atlanta, even the traffic, because it's a place where I really discovered who I was and what I wanted. And I fell in love in Atlanta, and I met my husband in Atlanta. And I really, really fell in love even more with chiropractic in Atlanta. And I loved the school that I went to. So I'm very grateful that I made that decision. And it's one that just us talking about it brings me joy. It allows me to really stop and reflect on my journey and know that sometimes you have to make these tough choices, but they end up working out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Can't believe I'm saying this, but shout out to ATL. Shout out to Atlanta, man. That's wow. What even is a chiropractor?
That's such a great question. What is your understanding of what a chiropractor is?
Wow. I have a very vague understanding of what a chiropractor is and what they do, right? And from a medicine perspective, I don't even know if that's a fair statement, because you consider yourself medical as well, no?
That's a gray space.
Okay.
No, because we don't prescribe any medicine.
Okay, that's fair.
You know?
Yeah.
Yes, because the general public views medical as anything relating to healthcare. Right. So,
okay.
It's
That's fair.
Yeah, it's a gray space.
Yeah.
But
so healthcare for sure.
Definitely.
But what I understand, I'll give you an example. On social media right now, there's I don't know if you've seen it, the videos of people like, making a bunch of noise, like they'll break a cardboard and,
Yes.
say, chiropractors be like. And
yes.
I think in the back of my mind, lazily, that's what I think of as well.
Yeah.
But I don't have any sort of really good understanding of what a chiropractor is and what a chiropractor does. And that's 100% from a place of ignorance. I don't know if it's from a place of I don't know, judgment either. But I don't think I've actually had that. And I think part of the reason I couldn't wait to talk to you about this, because I was hoping to have some clarity on some of these misgivings that I think people in the traditional medical world may have about chiropractor.
Yeah.
And learn a little bit more about it. So I don't have a good understanding. I can't even give you a good answer as to what I think it is, because I haven't really, I've never been to a chiropractor.
Okay.
And thankfully, I haven't had any issues that would make me think, I need to go see a chiropractor for this, right? But I haven't thought about sending a patient to a chiropractor, but I know many, many people. Obviously, I know you are a chiropractor. I know many, many people that go to chiropractors, and they are absolutely, they absolutely love it.
Yes.
They're enamored by the field. They're thankful for their chiropractor. They are, like you said, the joy and happiness that comes. Most of the people that I have encountered that do work with a chiropractor have had positive experiences, which can be a juxtaposition to what we get, right? So what I get, most of the people, some people leave my office probably in a bad mood, because I'm telling bad news, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So to be fair, I don't know much, but I definitely want to know more.
Well, I think, to be fair back to you, most people don't know, right? And so conversations like these are very helpful, because we get to talk about this, right? So we'll start with, just to address the social media of, I have a lot of new patients that come in. Are you going to do this? Like I'm like, it's not going to be like that. So you have to understand a lot of these things that you see on social media. Some of them are pretty accurate, and some of them are, of course, amplified
exaggerated
for social media. Just like social media is an exaggeration of real life, right? So similar there. Let's go back to what chiropractic is. So I'll start with the base of the philosophy of chiropractic. So then you can understand the mechanism behind it, the science behind it, right? So a lot of what traditional medicine is, you have a patient that comes in with symptoms. You make a diagnosis based off of those symptoms, and whatever your treatment is usually a treatment of symptoms, honestly. Or now I think that physicians have a different way of looking at things than previously before. I'm very grateful for it, right? Okay. I think that there's been more of a movement of I use the word holistic as an adjective, or a 360 view of, okay, yes, you're experiencing this, but why is that happening, versus let's just treat those symptoms and instead of figuring out why that's happening. Chiropractors really focus on the why, right? So if I have a patient that comes in, most of my patients do come in with neck pain or back pain. Could I adjust them and their neck pain is better or their back pain is better? Absolutely. We understand that the space that we work in on the body near the spine is a part of the nervous system. So most of our training, most of our philosophy, most of our mechanisms always tie back into the nervous system. So we know that the brain is connected to your spinal cord runs down your spine. You have all of these nerve roots that branch off into different parts of your body. We know that the brain is responsible for movement, for pretty much everything that's happening in your body. So if we're going to touch an area that the brain specifically is using as a vessel to send messages out to the body, we have to really think about, there's not just muscles in that area. Nerves are not just signals for pain, right? There are other processes in the body that are happening. And we have to know that if we go in and we touch that, it may affect things, or it will affect things in a positive way. It can be in a negative way if you're on what you see on social media, just picking a joint and getting a noise out of it, right? So chiropractic is very specific, and we have so much of our education is centered around the nervous system, because so much of what we do is centered around the nervous system. So I'll give you an example. There are many, many cases of, I would say, let's start with something simple for people to understand. Someone comes in with lower back pain, and that's why they're there. We look at pain is never your problem. Pain is an indicator that there's a problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the pain is the superficial manifestation of something that's happening deeper.
Exactly. Okay. So I always tell my patients, pain is just your way of your body telling you there's something going on here. Could we do something to mask your pain? Sure. But then did we really fix why you have pain there in the first place? I think that's the biggest difference, or the thing that people don't understand about chiropractic, is that it's not just about neck pain and back pain. It's about function, right? So I have many patients that they come in for back pain. I say, okay, I have to think nervous system. So I think what nerves are leaving the nerve roots in the lower part of the back, things that are working with digestion. So then I start asking them, are you having trouble? Are you constipated? Are you having digestive issues? Things like that. Then they're like, oh yeah, you know what, I am. Or I didn't think that those two were connected. Or we have something called a chiropractic blowout in infants, where Parents will bring their infants in because they're constipated. We can do what we call a sacral adjustment. And then sometimes before they leave the office, they're having a blowout. We call it a chiropractic blowout because we understand that our job is to identify where there is an interference within the nervous system, specifically where it is, and to remove it so that the body can function. So I'm not fixing anyone. I'm removing an interference so that your body can fix itself. Wow.
I think that is probably the best explanation I've had. And again, to be fair, I haven't had many, but that's a really good explanation, and it gives me some clarity.
Yeah.
On what people are talking about.
Yeah.
Interference. What I imagine many things can contribute to to these interferences, right? Is fixing the interference, is it always through adjustment?
No, it's not.
An adjustment meaning the way I think of adjustments obviously is
us moving a joint, right? It has an audible noise, right? So most people focus on what they can hear or what they can see, but there's a lot of other things that you can't see that are happening with the nervous system. So I know that most of what you see on social media or what you know about chiropractic, just most of what you know about anything is what you can see, right? That's across the board, across anything, right? So going back to interference, most chiropractors have three main categories of an interference. So we call them the 3 T's. Okay. Trauma, toxins, and the last one is going to be thoughts. And I know that sounds interesting, right? So some things we can remove with an adjustment. Some things we can't, right? Most chiropractors operate in the space of removing trauma. So whether that be I had a patient come in, they slipped on ice during the freeze, right? So there is a trauma for you, right? Toxins would be what we put into our body. Right. And it is within our scope of practice to operate in a nutrition space. Okay. So it's not my specialty. I refer patients out for that, but it is within my scope of practice. So what we put into our body has a lot to do with how our body functions. I think that most healthcare providers would agree with that, right? And then thoughts. So a lot of the times we like to separate our mental health from our physical health. Why would we think that they would be separate if we are one unit? Why would we think that our emotional well-being, our thoughts, our emotional traumas wouldn't have a physical effect on us? Mental health, right? We like to, another big difference, or a lot of something that people don't understand about chiropractic is that we operate in a space knowing that everything is connected. So if I have a patient that's coming to me and they're like, oh, I keep getting these headaches. Now, do you have patients where they come to the chiropractor X amount of times and that's not the thing that's removing their interference? Absolutely, right? It's my job to identify this may not be the space for you. It happens. Everyone is not a success. Everyone is not a miracle story. It happens. If we're just being honest, right? But it's my job to really identify and also educate the patient that if you're coming to me with headaches, okay, we'll check everything out that would cause a headache, right? Most of the time, if you're coming with neck pain or headache, you want me to go to where your head is or to where your neck is or to where you feel tension. I want to know, when do you feel tension? You know, like, do you feel tension at work? Then we start to really identify, is there that third T, are thoughts playing into this? Is that how your body is manifesting what you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis? So it's really about uncovering what a patient is actually experiencing on a day-to-day basis, instead of they come to me with headaches, they come to me with neck pain. yeah, I feel a tight muscle here. We correct it and we send them on about their day. I'm grateful because through that process, you really get to learn a lot about your patient.
Right.
You spend a lot of time with them and you want to dig deep. And almost every single patient of mine tells me, no one has spent this much time with me. I don't feel like anyone has cared in the way that you care. And I don't think that medical doctors I don't think that I don't have this negative stigma about, in general, the medical profession. I mean, we need medicine, right? My husband works in the pharmaceutical industry, so I have an open mind to what people need to take them to that next level of health. But I also understand that and I tell my patients this, it's not your medical doctor's fault that they weren't able to spend 30 minutes with you. You know, it's the overall system. Most chiropractors are in private practice. When you're in private practice, you have the liberty to be with.
Kind of set that time.
Exactly. You can set that time. So it is a different experience for patients, one that I'm grateful to be a part of. I think that's why when I walked into that chiropractor's office for the first time, there was so much joy there, because we get to slow down and we get to pause and we get to really peel back those layers of what's going on with that patient to understand, like, what does your diet look like? You know, what does your posture look like on a day-to-day basis? even myself.
Fix my posture real quick.
Even myself, you know. So it really uncovering those 3 T's, deciding where's that interference. It's not just a surface level. You have a misaligned joint here. It's creating inflammation. Right. It's creating tension in the muscle. We relax the muscle, because why do you keep getting tension in your muscle in the first place? Right.
Why? Yeah. Why? It's interesting to me. I like that thought process: toxins, trauma, and thoughts.
Yes.
You had said that, you know, patients, after they talk to you, that, you know, they're going through a lot of emotions, and you would say, "I'm not your therapist, I'm your chiropractor." But it sounds like you are somewhat of a therapist.
And I say it in an empathetic way. So of course, absolutely. I'm like, I'm going to recommend that you see. I have a box of tissues here, but these, I understand. And everyone apologize. I have days where I'll have maybe, like, you know, let's say if I have 5 new patients, 4 out of the 5 are in tears when they leave, and they are so apologetic about it. And I'm like, that's why I keep tissues here. Then it makes them feel like, okay, I'm not the only one that cries when I go to my chiropractor. And it's really not chiropractic that's making them cry. It's just me sitting down, listening, uncovering, why is your body responding the way that it is?
Right.
And a lot of the times people have never sat down and made that reflection, but you got to talk to somebody, and I can't talk to you like this every time. So
what are the most common referrals then that you would make outside of your practice? So like, you know, so therapist being one. Therapists? Who are the people that, you know, when your patients need that extra something? Who are the common ones that you refer to?
I refer to a lot of orthos. I refer to a lot of physical therapists. I refer to, at times I refer to pain management, which is a tricky one, but I refer to pain management. You know, you have those cases where you hate to say that they need surgery, but you can, if you get MRI results back, or you look at an X-ray, it's there. We have something called limitations of matter, meaning limitations of physical matter. No matter how many times I adjust you, no matter if you fell off of a horse and broke your neck, I'm not going to adjust you. You need to go and see a surgeon at that point. So we have limitations of matter, but I have not every, and I don't speak for all chiropractors, because you have some chiropractors that, you know, they really believe that referral out is the absolute last thing. And for me, sometimes it is, but a lot of the times I just co-manage.
Right.
You know, I'm going to refer you to this person. We'll still be able to get you to where the best that we can in the meantime. But maybe this person or this provider is going to take you to that next level. But the most common would be physical therapists, orthos, interventional pain management. I referred back to a lot of times primary care providers, you know, therapists. So it really depends on nutritionists, what the patient needs.
Right.
And you have to just spend that time with the patient. And you have to be, I'm sure you would agree, as a provider, there's a level of just being selfless. You have to leave everything that you have going on at the door when you walk into a room with a patient. Everything is about them. Your house could be burning down. I've had crazy situations, but I know I need to show up for my patients. And sometimes it can be unhealthy, if I'm being honest, you know, because we're people too.
Right.
But when you go in that room and it's just all about them, then you know what you know what you need to do to help that patient get to their very best. And if you can't, then you refer out, you know?
I think of just having this conversation here, you talk about this. I reflect on what, I don't know who wrote this, but it's essentially a like the patient's manifesto, if you will. I'm probably saying it wrong, but essentially for us, it's going to work, right? The hospital, the clinic, it's just another day. But to our patients, it's not that. It's a very important day for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
So they're not feeling well. They're concerned about this. It's a family member. So anytime I see someone in the hospital and anytime I see a patient, I'm mindful that this isn't normal for them, whereas this is normal for me. I can talk to you as a patient and then go have my coffee, right? No matter what I said to you, when I close that door, I have the liberty of stepping out of the space that we just created, irrespective of the news or whatever we discussed. I mean, I have the liberty to step away from that, and our patients don't have that.
Yeah.
So I'm mindful that when I walk into a patient's room, I try to be very elegant and thoughtful about this, that is their safe space. That's their space, right? My clinic, quote unquote, my office, quote unquote, but it's my patient's safe space. And so walking into that, I try to have a little bit of reverence for that, right? So they are vulnerable in that space.
Yes.
They are scared. They're anxious, our patients. And they need you to be someone that offers something. And often it could be just presence. But I think at the very least, it should be that presence, right? To be mindful of them and to be present for them. So I definitely appreciate that what you're saying. I think that's a little bit of what we can all do as providers for all of our patients.
Yeah. It's another thing that I hear often outside of everything you just mentioned is many people want to be validated. I have many people come to me and say, you know, especially even in their own home, my husband doesn't believe that I'm in this much pain, or my wife doesn't believe I'm in this, or people think I'm dramatic, or that's even just your presence, like you said, listening to them validates that they are experiencing something outside of what they believe to be their normal function.
Right.
And that there's a high value to that with patients, you know?
And especially because we don't have an objective way of measuring some of the things that we take care of. So pain there's no, other than the subjective experience, there's no way to say, your pain is, 6 out of 10 or it's on the, I don't know, whatever scale. that to make it like, you know, you have objective data for everything else. So much of what we do, we have objective data for that. You have the lab work, you have the imaging, but especially when it comes to pain, and notwithstanding the different categories of pain, and that makes it even more challenging, right?
Yeah.
Emotional, spiritual, and then of course physical pain, right?
Yeah.
There's so many different types of pain and amongst all of those, we have no way of objectively quantifying that, which makes it especially difficult.
It is. I like to tie it back to how they function on a day-to-day basis. So if someone comes in and they tell me, you know, I'm having difficulty with my back, I ask them, what is it preventing you from doing? Or what could you do even better if you didn't have this to worry about? Right. So then that gives me an insight on, because you have people that have a high tolerance for pain and they're like, well, I still push through the day. Well, how is it at the end of the day? What are you not able to do at the end of the day? Right. That helps me at least identify how are they functioning with this. Right.
That's a great question. I think I'll definitely add that to my interview process. What is it preventing you from doing?
Yeah.
And
what could you do even better if you didn't
have? I love that.
Because a lot of people will say it doesn't stop me from doing anything. I just push through. I'm like, oh, what could you do? What are you pushing through? What could you do even better if you didn't have this to push through? Right. It gives you an idea of how is this affecting that person's life. I love that. Yeah.
I'm stealing it.
I won't charge you this time. Next one's going to cost you.
Oh Lord, I'm 100% stealing that. I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm sure that provides tremendous insight. Right. Wow. So do you own your own practice? Do you have your own practice?
I do.
Oh,
I'm in a hybrid mode right now. So I am with a group 2 days out of the week. And then I have my own practice now, the other 3 days out of the week. Chiro 9.
Chiro 9. You have a website and everything. We'll have to put the links
I do.
in the show.
I do. So for those watching that don't know that I'm in New Orleans right now. When I first got to New Orleans, I asked my husband, Brian, he's a native here, to drive me around. And of course, if you're not from New Orleans and you remember the Katrina experience, the thing that I remember about New Orleans is, I was like, take me to the 9th Ward. He was like, the 9th Ward, why do you want to? I'm like, I want to see, I want to see where the levees broke. And I want to I want to see what we all heard about. And I want to see like, where's the community at today? Like, it's been so long. And when he took me there, I was so shocked at how many homes are still abandoned, or there's been a lot of growth. Absolutely. We won't take away from that. But at the time when he brought me here, I just thought that it was, you hear about all these celebrities coming in and donating all of this money and all of these new homes being built. And the maybe 2 or 3 homes that you see on TV that are nice and new now, you think that's everything. And it was not that at all. Right. And I remember being over there feeling like that feeling that we talk about. That's where I needed to be whenever I opened my practice. Of course, is it easier to open a practice in an area where especially as a chiropractor, where that people are going to have the income to pay for chiropractic, the transportation to get there, all of these barriers to treatment, right? Where there's going to be it's just going to be easier for your demographic that you are providing for or servicing. But I wanted to be in an area where I kind of like where people forgot about it.
And underserved.
Exactly. If you go over there, there is a wonderful urgent care facility there. They are so just rooted into the community. There is one other primary care office over there. There was a few other practitioners that kind of have dried out, but it's not what you would consider a medical hub or not where, you have those buildings or you have everything is near a hospital. It's not that.
Right.
But there are people over there, right? And another space that since moving to Louisiana, Never thought about this in chiropractic school. Never knew that there was a need for this until I started practicing in Gonzales, Louisiana. There's a population of people that previously were addicted to drugs. There's a population of people that previously were addicted to painkillers. They still have concerns. They still have symptoms and function that they need to improve on. They still have pain. They get injured and they're afraid to take pain medication. And when they go to the hospital, or they go to their, go to their doctor, they're either going to get an anti-inflammatory, a muscle relaxer. I have patients that had addictions that were so severe, they're nervous to take ibuprofen.
Wow.
They don't want to take anything. They're nervous to take a Tylenol. They're nervous to take a leave. Just people that have really been at the lowest of the low
because of the addiction.
Because of their addiction, and they do not believe that there's any other option for them. I never thought about that in chiropractic school.
I've never thought about that until now.
Yeah, I never thought about that. So many of your underserved areas, many of the people in that area do struggle with addiction, if we're just being honest, right? So being there, I feel like it's such a cool neighborhood. It's very accepting of all people. And I'm so happy to be there and serve people. I mean, like, we're not fully open yet, but I'm just so excited to, I want to, like, I'm like crazy. I want to go and knock on everybody's door. Like, I'm your new chiropractor. Like, get this crazy lady from my doorstep. But I feel like the neighborhood would be very open to it. It's just that type of place,
Right. And this is the neighborhood in Gonzales? Or
this is in New Orleans.
So this is Cairo 9.
Cairo 9. We're in the 9th Ward. Yes. So we're in the 9th Ward. Someone asked me, like, what are you going to name it if you open another location? It'll still be Cairo 9. Because that's where the passion, that's where
stems from.
Yeah, that's where the initiative is starting, right? So I'm very, very, very excited about that.
When are you opening for full?
We will be open by the end of February. Yes, I still see patients now. Yeah. But I mean, I guess I'm open now, but I'm just taking a beach walk. Yeah, I tend to, back to my childhood, like making sure everything is perfect and in alignment. I tend to kind of really, I'm hard on myself with things. I'm wanting everything to be perfect. And sometimes I just pile too much on my plate at one time. And my husband and I talked, and we really wanted this to be a peaceful process, a process that did not involve a lot of stress, because you don't want that. I don't want that energy surrounding this.
That space.
Yeah. We've done some really tough, my husband and I have gotten in some really tough projects that that's for another podcast. But we've had some really tough projects that just had some negative space around it, and we didn't want that for this. So we're taking our time. Yeah.
That's one, kudos to you. That's incredibly noble. And thoughtful, right? So I don't know many people that would think of putting their space, putting their practice in a place like the 9th Ward.
Yeah.
With the intentions that you have, right?
Yes.
So someone, it may be that they're doing it for other reasons, but I am really, really thankful that you're doing this.
Yes.
And thinking of the people there. I'm sure they will be grateful too.
Yeah.
And you definitely given me something to think about, because I will freely admit I haven't thought about that population, especially. I'm not talking about 9th Ward in this case, but I'm talking about the especially the population that are recovering from addiction. And that fear is essentially preventing them from even seeking some sort of alleviation.
Yes.
And it's really the pain that led to the addiction in the first place.
Exactly.
I'm sure that must be a cruel condition to go through.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we feel like the only way to fix that is through pain meds.
Yeah. I mean, and luckily there are other things now, but that of course are not going to cause an addiction, but people have to get there first up here before they can even take that step. Right.
Thoughts.
Yes. And there's sometimes a level of distrust because some of them, their addiction came from being prescribed something. So there's a lot of things that they have to overcome before they can even get to those options that are, of course, not going to create an addiction for them. But I'd like to be there in the meantime for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. What's next for you? Let's say, I always ask this, it's in the spirit of what's next. In the next year, in 3 years' time,
Okay.
in 5 and in 10 years,
Wow.
where do you see yourself? And so that's a prospective view, and then retrospective view. What would your 10 years ago, who you were 10 years ago, looking at you today?
Wow.
What would she think of you today? And you can start with that one first.
Oh, I'll start with that. She would be very shocked.
Really?
She would be. She would be shocked at just who I've become. That I'm okay with breaking rules a little bit. Not ones that are going to get me into trouble though. She would be proud of me. She would be my biggest cheerleader still.
I love that.
She would be happy for me. Yeah. And, within the next year, most of my focus is going to my baby Cairo 9. So probably the next year to 2 years, 5 years. Wow. I haven't even thought about 5 years. I mean, my mom always asked me like, do you want to have multiple locations? And I'm sure I would one day. I'm very ambitious. Yeah, right now I'm starting with the 9th ward and we'll see what expansion looks like from there. And 10 years, the only 10-year plan I have is surrounded around finances, honestly. But I think my experience with my father and having this trajectory in my head of, oh, my dad will be out of prison here and then this is going to happen, has taught me to stay present, to limit some of our expectations and to enjoy the journey. So I don't know about 10 years. Yeah.
I think that's a fair answer given the story behind it. I think that's a very fair answer. Has your mom visited here? I'm sure she
my
has.
gosh, yes. My mom comes all the time.
Yeah.
I just talked to her today and she's like, when are we coming back? She wants to come every month. She's like, what can I do? I want to market for you. I honestly wish that she lived here.
What does she do?
My mom she's actually in the healthcare industry on the administrative side. So you hear about all of these travel nurses and when COVID happened and all these hospitals needed extra nurses, my mom is the one that supplies all the hospitals with these nurses and gets these travel contracts for nurses. So she works on the nursing side when it comes to contracting nurses out. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up COVID because I wanted to ask you, because you earlier in the conversation, you had made the point that it was in 2020 that you got to spend the time with yourself, like so many of us, right? And try to kind of dive deep into those thoughts and kind of peel away at the onion as to why you are the way you are in conjunction with, talking with your husband, Brian.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, was that something you did personally or did you get your own, like someone to talk with?
I had a therapist and I spoke with my therapist, and something that we uncovered was the emotion of abandonment. And I thought that, at first I disagreed with her. She's like, you have this, you were abandoned essentially as a child by your father. And I have such a positive relationship with my father that I did not want to look at our relationship in the sense that he abandoned me.
In that light.
Exactly.
In the light of abandonment.
Exactly. Even though when you look at it and you remove the emotion out of it and you look at ABC, like you just lay it all out.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, right? So I had to work through that, and it set me free in a lot of ways. It set me free. I became more confident in myself, more confident in my marriage, in my friendships. It also set me free in my relationship with my stepfather. Because I always felt like, because my father was in prison, he only had, like, the only thing that he had was he was my father. He didn't have anything else. Even though my stepfather was amazing in terms of making sure that I still had a relationship with my biological father. I mean, you know, my dad called every week. My mom took me multiple times a year to visit him in prison, even though she was married. You know, that must be difficult for him. Your wife is going to, you know, spend the day with her ex-husband and her daughter, but he was absolutely
supportive.
Yeah, so supportive about it. But it set me free because within the 2020 therapy, and I also realized that he was my dad, not my stepdad, if that makes sense. He did everything that a father would do. You know, everything that you would think a father does, he did. So why can't I have two?
There's a really good John Mayer song. I love me some John Mayer. You know John Mayer?
Yeah, of course.
He says it's a song, Love is a Verb.
Okay, I don't know that one though. I'm sure if you sang it, I would know it. Like I don't know names of songs. I don't know. But when people sing it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know that. Yeah.
I'm not going to sing it.
Oh.
If you catch me at karaoke, I might. But,
Okay.
But it's a horrible karaoke song anyway. But anyway, love is a verb. It ain't a thing. That's the line from it. I would make the case that so is fatherhood.
Yeah.
So is any sort of paternal, or not paternal, but parental role. It's a verb. It's more important that you do the dad things.
Yeah.
Than that you have the title of dad.
Yes.
Right. It's more important that you're the action of what that word means.
Yes.
Right. So I just highlight. So love is a verb. Dad is a verb.
Yes.
Dad is, and I'm learning that aspect as well. I'm a father of two, as you know.
Yes.
Trying to be a father by action, and not. And I think we should try to be these things in all aspects of our lives. So father by action, husband by action, physician, doctor by action.
Yeah.
Not just by name.
Yes.
So again, we gave a bunch of shout outs, but shout out to all the dads.
Yeah. I know the dads get it so tough on Father's Day. Y'all get like t-shirts.
We get ties.
Shirts.
Moms get Super Bowl ads and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Dads get
diamonds and you name it, but
it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. We're thankful. we're happy to be here doing what needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. Again, shout out to your dads.
Yes, both of them.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to spend this lovely afternoon with me.
This was fun.
Right? It wasn't too bad.
I
right?
know. But yeah, it was good.
Good. I always tell all the guests, not all, but most of the guests are always like, oh man, I'm nervous about it. And I'm nervous about it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
You don't seem nervous.
I'm dying inside. But thanks so much for sharing your story. I think I have learned a lot about what I didn't even know up until this episode that you just say chiropractic and not, because I guess I don't know. I didn't know what the actual job was, because the practitioner is chiropractor.
Yes.
And the field is chiropractic.
Yes.
See, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Forgive my ignorance, but thanks for sharing your story. It's a beautiful, elegant, and a tremendous story. One that I think anyone that hears this can enjoy the perseverance, especially given everything that you've been through. You say it's simple, but I think that's a lot to carry too.
It can.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much straightforward,
Straightforward can be, something else too. But yeah.
Well, thank you for the platform.
Absolutely.
And this was fun.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming through. We'll have to have you on again as a second guest.
Okay.
At some point.
All future advice will have a fee.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, you take Cash App or Venmo?
Cash only, sorry.
Hopefully by then we'll have updates on Chiro 9.
Yes.
So you need to send me your website and all that stuff. We'll add it to the show notes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Now listen, y'all.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of The Last Zebra. As always, please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in the next episode. As always, each episode drops on Monday mornings, everywhere you listen to your podcast, and on Tuesdays on YouTube. Have a great day.